morning, everybody. Welcome to Keys to the Kingdom. I'm Marissa. I hope you're all having a wonderful Sunday morning. Glad some of you are able to make it. I'm just going to take some time and let some people come on for a few minutes here. I'm sorry about yesterday and not being able to do the video yesterday as I had hoped. I'm having a lot of trouble with Facebook. Facebook is giving me some trouble for some reason. They're not really showing any of the posts. This just happened within the last week. They're not reaching anybody. And so I'm just praying and hoping that Lighthouse comes out soon, because we are going to be transferring over to Lighthouse as soon as it comes out. And we'll be doing pretty much everything over there. So I hope that you will be willing to go to Lighthouse with me. It's going to be really, it's going to be the best of all the worlds of Facebook. It's going to have the best of YouTube, and it's also going to have the best of, you know, Amazon or Etsy. Basically, you'll be able to have your social media platform, your videoing platform, which is like YouTube, and then you'll be able to sell on Lighthouse as well. So there will be a marketplace. So I'm really looking forward to going over to Lighthouse, because Facebook is terrible. It's really terrible. I think at one point Facebook was a really good platform, and now it's not. It's just not anymore. Yes, Gina, still say Shabbat Shalom. We're just going to pretend today's our Shabbat. Raheem, grateful morning to all. Let God speak to all of us today. Yes, amen. I'm really excited to be getting back into the Bible and to reading our Bible, because this is the living Word of God, and it's important to know it from front to back. We're still in the book of Genesis. We're actually today in chapter 37. We're going to go through chapter 37 to chapter 40. And so I'm glad to be back in the Word, and hopefully we'll be able to, continue with our Bible readings on the new platform when Lighthouse comes out. Because, like I said, this entire week, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Facebook isn't showing any of the posts it's going to hardly anybody. Normally, the posts will reach hundreds and or even to thousands of people, and it's reaching like 20 people. If you're familiar with Facebook algorithm, that's nothing. That's basically, they're just not showing your post to anybody. And this is every single post that I'm posting. I don't know why. So I'm very discouraged in that sense. However, maybe it's happening for a reason, because we are going to be switching over to Lighthouse, and maybe I'm supposed to start doing more videos. Maybe I should just be doing more videos and not really posting. But God's willing, Lighthouse will be out soon, and until that time, maybe God will allow me to have time to do more videos. The second thing I wanted to mention is I did a book giveaway from our last video. That was the last video in the Tares Among the Wheat series, and I gave away the Tares Among the Wheat book. I don't know if there's more trouble with, again, the algorithm. I'm trying to contact the person who won the book, and she's been able to see some of my messages, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to send her the book, because I'm trying to contact this person, and she's only seeing some of my messages. I don't know. So I might have to do another drawing to give that book away, because I'm just having all sorts of trouble on Facebook. It's just not working. I would be surprised if this video reaches anybody, honestly. So just keep your eyes peeled because I may pick another winner for the book from last week. Because Shelly, if you're watching, let me know. I haven't been able to contact you, sweetie. You did win the book, but it seems like there's some trouble with communicating because I still haven't been able to confirm that with you. All right, so let me see here. Is there anybody on here who has not read their entire Bible? Can you let me know in the comments? Let me know if you have not read your entire Bible. I'm curious to know. And I am drinking my coffee this morning. Has anybody not read their entire Bible? Maybe you've just read parts, but not the whole thing. Raheem. Okay, Raheem says me. Okay. Just getting a feel for who may have and who may have not. Stacy says your sound is going in and out too and freezes sometimes, but it might be on my side because I'm in my car. Stacy says I'm guilty. Is anybody else having a hard time hearing me? Is the sound sounding weird to anybody else? I haven't, just in parts. Raheem, are you having trouble hearing me? Or Gina, are you guys having trouble hearing me? Let me know. Stacy said she's saying the sound's going in and out. Oh, it's the joys of technology, I guess. Yes, it's going in and out here too. Okay. I don't know. Literally everything's the same. All my settings are the same. Everything's the same. I just don't know what God is trying to tell me. I don't know. Is it better now? Is it the same? Do I sound the same? Let me know. USB camera. Is everything sounding better? Am I choppy? Okay, well, I'm just going to have to continue because I don't know what else to do. Raheem says it's better. Okay, well, with that, it's a little better. Okay. Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. Honestly, I don't know. It's literally been like everything on Facebook's going wrong, and now the sound is going wrong. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start reading. Chapter 37, we're going to start with verse 1, and this is all pertaining to Joseph and his dreams. And then all of a sudden, in this storyline of Joseph, we're going to see this like pause and this interjection of the life of Judah come into the picture. So let's keep that in mind. Because it's very, John says I can hear fine. Okay, well, I'm just going to keep going. It's better for me too. Okay, well, I'm just going to keep going before it messes up again. So, like I said, these are the dreams of Joseph, and we're going to see him in Egypt. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of this storyline of Joseph, the book of Genesis just interjects with what's happening with Judah. And then it goes back to Joseph. So it's very interesting that the word does that. And let's go ahead and see what's going on with Joseph and his dreams. All right, so chapter 37, it says, Jacob lived in the land of his fathers, sojourning in the land of Canaan. So they're in the land of Canaan. And as you remember, they're basically foreigners in this land because they're surrounded by Canaanites. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph being 17 years old. Joseph was only 17 years old at this time. And he was the youngest, besides his brother Benjamin. He was the youngest. 17 years old, and was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them back to their father. So he's 17 years old. He's pasturing the flock with his brothers, the brothers of Bilhah and Zilpah. Okay? And he brings, basically, he's tattletaling on his brothers to his father Jacob. I'm sorry. So Joseph is basically tattletaling on his brothers. It seems like Joseph was maybe more of the goody two shoes in the family, and he was very close to Jacob. Jacob really, really loved Joseph because it was his son from Rachel. And remember, at this point, Rachel has passed. She died giving birth to Benjamin. Okay? So Jacob favors him, and not only does he favor him, but Joseph ends up sort of being the goody two-shoes, telling on his brothers when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. So it's causing this rift and this animosity between the brothers. And it's a very strange dynamic because these brothers have different moms. Joseph has a different mom, and his mom is gone, but Joseph came from Rachel. His other brothers came from either Leah or Bilhah and Zilpah, which were the handmaidens of Leah and Rachel. Now, Israel, or Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of the other sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. So now Jacob is making this statement, this unspoken statement that Joseph is his favorite by making him this coat of many colors. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. So now they're just, there's this sort of silent war going on between them. The brothers are becoming irritated by Joseph because Joseph has favor in Jacob's eyes, and he's also tattletaling on them, like I said. Now Joseph has a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. So not only is he the goody two-shoes, not only is he favored by Jacob, not only is he getting this coat of many colors from his father, which the other ones didn't get, and not only is he tattletaling on them for their misdoings, but now Joseph has a dream. And when he tells it to his brothers, it's just going to make them hate him even more. They're just like, get this boy out of here. He said to them, so this is Joseph's dream. He said to them, hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field. And behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dream and for his words. So let's pause for a second and take a look at this dream. And notice, based on our study that we did on the wheat among the tares, that his dream is very agricultural. The setting is in agricultural terms. So his sheaf arose and stood upright, and the other sheaves, his brother's sheaves, or his whole family really, bowed down to his sheaf. Naturally, if someone, I don't know if you've ever experienced someone coming up to you and saying, oh, let me tell you this dream, and it makes them sound really good, and you're like, okay, woo, you don't, it's not taken very well. So you have to be careful when God gives you dreams, especially if those dreams make you sound important or favored. If you're telling those dreams to the wrong person, they're not going to receive it well. Unless you tell those dreams to someone who is maybe like a teacher to you, or someone that you've gone to for counsel in the past, you're better off not telling those dreams to anyone except for people like that, because number one, if they're not a believer, then they're really not going to understand your dream anyway. And then even in the believing community, you have to be careful who you tell the dreams to, because not everybody cares. Not everybody cares to hear what God's doing in your life, even if they're believers. Unfortunately, hey Crystal, glad you can make it. And not everybody has your well-being in their hearts. So you have to be careful who you share your dreams with, because of those reasons. And someone else might try to maybe even misinterpret your dream. They may even, try to twist the meaning of the dream around. So you just have to be careful who you share your dreams with. But Joseph was like, wow, look at this dream I had, and I know that God's going to do something great in my life. Let me just tell all my brothers and my family about it. Then Joseph dreams another dream. Oh, but let me just back up for a second. I did want to reiterate the fact that his dream was in agricultural terms. And I am going to actually pause for a second and just share. This is a dream that I had. Most of my dreams, and I've said this a number of times on the page, is that I've noticed with other believers too, that most of the dreams that were from God, and most of God's speaking always happened like at the beginning of your walk. And I always liken it to the children of Israel coming out of Egypt and God doing all these big miracles and speaking, and you don't see too much of that once they go back into the land. Good morning, Nancy. So glad you could make it, sweetie. You don't really see that too much when Israel goes back into the land. God speaks normally just to the prophets, and you're not seeing a lot of miracles. So a lot of times God speaks more when we're coming out of Egypt. That's when he's almost like the loudest. After that, you really have to work to hear God's voice. And you will, but it's always very, very loud in the beginning. And in the beginning of my walk, I do remember having a dream. There's probably, I could count on both hands the dreams that I've had that were from God. And I dream every night. From a very small child, I have dreamt every single night dreams that were very vivid, very clear. But like I said, I could count probably on both hands the ones that were a message from God, the ones that were prophetic, the ones that I knew that God was speaking. It just doesn't happen all the time. And like I said, I dream every single night. And so over time, you start to learn which dreams are from God and which dreams are just a rehashing of your consciousness, of what was going on in your head or what was going on throughout your day. Maybe what you saw on TV, maybe what you heard on the radio, whatever you were thinking, and what was just sort of like a hodgepodge of what was going on in your subconscious. Very, very rarely are you going to get the dream that is a message from God or is prophetic. When you do, you just know, because it's going to be very different. Crystal said, agree, mine too. Okay, so that's good to hear. So when you do have a dream that's from God, it's very clear that it's from God because of a few reasons. It's different from the other dreams that you have, the way that it's set up. what you dream, you'll know it's from God because it's not what you were thinking. It's not anything that you knew about. Sometimes it's something that you didn't even know. And then God will confirm it later. And that's how you'll know it's from God. Another way you'll know a dream is from God is there will be different scenes, like very distinct different scenes in your dream. Another way you'll know it's from God is you may have it more than one time. But not necessarily all of those things and not necessarily just one of those things mean that it was from God. So you kind of have to use your discernment to know what the dream is telling you. So the reason I want to bring this up is because of this agricultural dream that Joseph had. And I remember very distinctly when I was first coming to God, and God gave me a dream of basically it was soil in the ground. This video is stopping and going. Okay, that's great. It's happening again. Okay. Is it getting better now? Is it still? Yes, it is. Yes, it is getting. Is it getting better, or is it still choppy? Better? Right, better or worse? Someone say a prayer for my computer and Facebook, because I'm having a lot of trouble with it for some reason. Okay, can you hear me now? Is it better now? Is this better? Not choppy? Somebody let me know. Okay. But it catches up where you left off. It's a lot better. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. So, what I was saying was, it keeps going in and out. Okay. I'm wondering if I should stop the video and restart it. I really don't want to do that because then I have two separate videos. Well, let's see here. I don't know what I can do. Yes, we can hear you. I'm just going to keep going. I apologize if it's messing up, but I really don't have much control over it. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So, what I was saying was, Joseph here is having an agricultural dream. It has to do with the sheaves, the binding of like the sheaves of wheat and the wheat bowing down to him. And this was a message from God. And God does speak this, he does speak very symbolically. I wanted to give you an example of a dream that I had when I was first coming to God. I remember it very, very clearly. And I always, just make sure you always write down the dreams that you really feel are from God, so that you can go back and hear so you can go back and remember what God was saying to you. Because sometimes we always forget. Write these dreams down. The ones that you feel like are from God, write them down. So anyways, in this dream, it was me and my sister, okay? And we were standing on soil. We were standing like on the soil in a garden. We were like shrunk down to small sizes, standing inside of the garden, standing on the soil. And in my dream, we came up out of the soil. We went in the soil and came up out of the soil like really spindly. You know when you grow crops and they're not getting enough sun? They're not getting enough sun. And they come out and they grow really, really, really long because they're trying to reach the sun. So they grow they grow too fast and they get real spindly and they don't have a good solid foundation. Okay? So in my dream, me and my sister turned into these spindly, long plants, okay, that had grown too quickly. They were trying to find the sun. So me and my sister were both coming to God, kind of at the same time. Well, in my dream, these plants went back into the soil and came out as very hardy, thick heads of lettuce. It was like this big, hardy head of lettuce, both of us. And that was it. That was the end of the dream. And it was definitely God confirming and telling me that at first we had grown up too quickly. We, were trying to find God, but God wasn't in our life the way that he should be. And then we went back into the soil, we went back into the Word, back into God, and then came out like we should. Basically, we were reborn again. When you're reborn again, and then that's when you start growing. That's why they call you a baby believer, because you've been reborn and now you're almost just starting your life the way it should have been. And now you're growing the way you should grow. But you see how God used an agricultural way of conveying this message to me about me and my sister? So I felt like sharing that with you just because I felt it pertained to the dream that Joseph had. And mind you, not all of your dreams are going to be agricultural. In fact, I think that may be the only agricultural... No, that is not the only agricultural way that God spoke to me. Excuse me. There was one other dream that I do remember having where God spoke agriculturally. Okay, so I'm going to tell you this one. I'm not going to go too far into the meaning of it because that will take too much time, but I am going to just show you all the other dreams that I had from God, if I recall correctly, were not in agricultural terms. Just that one that I just explained, having to do with the lettuce heads, and then this other one that I had where I was in my grandmother's house, but it was like a brand new house, and I went out the side of the house and along the fence. It's so weird because there were peppers growing on a vine. Peppers don't really grow on a vine. They grow upwards on a plant. But in my dream, they were growing on a vine and they were full and they were ready to harvest. And there was green, yellow, and red peppers, just like there's green, yellow, and red peppers naturally. And they were full and they were ready to harvest. And God was showing me something. This is a personal dream, so I'm not going to get into the meaning of it. I just want to show you that he used these peppers in my dream to convey a message to me. I do believe those are the only two agricultural dreams I've ever had. But it was funny because he did speak agriculturally to me in those two dreams. Now we're going to see another dream that Joseph had, where he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers. So he didn't even learn the first time. They're hating him. He doesn't care. Joseph doesn't care that his brothers hate him because he is favored by his father, and he has the unction already at this age to know that it's from God. He just doesn't have the wisdom to keep his mouth shut. And maybe it's not a good idea to tell my brothers about this dream because they hate me. But he has another dream and he tells his brothers again. And this is his dream this time. And this is still agricultural, even though it has to do with the sun, moon, and the stars. Behold, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him. So now Jacob is rebuking him. And said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept the saying in mind. So at first Jacob is like, rebuking him because he's saying, what are you talking about here? But there's part of Jacob that's like, I know my son. He's kind of special. Joseph's kind of special. He's hearing from God. He's having these dreams. He's a goody two shoes. He's trying to do the right thing, and I feel like Jacob can see the favor that is upon his son Joseph. So he keeps this dream in mind, just kind of in the back of his head, because when God gives you something, you can explain it to somebody, but they're not really going to hear you. Like, they're hearing your dream, but they're not really going to understand it, first of all, because they don't understand the meaning of it. And it's very personal. When you have a dream or a vision or God speaks to you, it's very personal. Even when it comes true, or until it comes true, it's mostly only going to be real for you. Not really anybody else. It's really only going to be real for you. That's why I said write your dreams down. I would only share those dreams with somebody very, very, very close. Okay, now it's skipping ahead to catch up. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on. I feel like this past week, now that we're getting back to the Bible reading, it's like I've basically been attacked on every electronic front that I could be attacked on. Facebook's not showing the posts. You can't hear me. Like I said, we're gonna be moving over to Lighthouse, so everything will be better soon. So now his brothers hate him. They're jealous of him, but Jacob is keeping this in mind. So now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. Okay. Now, mind you, they are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, Here I am. Joseph said, Here I am. So he said to him, Go now and see. He's told on his brothers before. And so it's obvious that his brothers have been known to kind of get into some mischief. So now he's saying, Go find out what's going on. Now notice that Joseph is with his father and the brothers are out pasturing the flock. Joseph is kind of a daddy's boy. So go find out what's going on with your brothers and bring back word to me. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, which is in southern Judea, and he came to Shechem. Shechem is, like north of Bethlehem, northern Judea. So he has to travel quite a ways. And a man found him wandering in the fields, and the man asked him, What are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? And the man said, They have gone away, for I heard them say, Let us go down to Dothan. So Dothan is actually even further north, like very northern Judea, than Shechem is. So they went to Shechem, and then they went even further north. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar. They see him coming. And before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. So they see him coming, and already they're like, We're going to kill him. We're far away from home. Daddy's not around to save him. We're going to kill him. They said to one another, Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of these pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what becomes of his dreams. Oh, we're going to serve him? Let's throw him in this pit and kill him and say that he was eaten by animals. We'll see how his dreams come true. But when Reuben heard it, and remember, Reuben is the oldest, when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, Let us not take his life. Let's not kill him. And Reuben said to them, Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to his father. So Reuben Reuben had very good intentions. He said, let's not kill him. Don't kill him. Let's just throw him in the pit. And the reason he wanted to throw him in the pit is so he could later come back and get him and bring him back to his father. I have a feeling that Reuben did this because Reuben was already in trouble with Jacob. Because Reuben, if you remember, had slept with his father's handmaiden. He had slept with, I think it was Zilpah. It was either Bilhah or Zilpah. Okay? So he's already on his father's poo-poo list because of doing that. So he might feel like, I've already done something terrible in my father's eyes. I don't want to be held accountable for doing anything else. So he's planning to throw him in the pit and go back and rescue him so that he can bring him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. And then they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty and there was no water in it. So it was a water cistern and they just threw him in. Which is usually like, I don't know. They're usually about 10 to 16 feet deep, these water cisterns. And so they throw him in the pit. And then they sit down and they start eating. So they throw him in the pit. They're like, okay, let's have lunch. They sit down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, and on their way to carry it down to Egypt. So they see the Ishmaelites coming with a caravan of gum, balm, and myrrh to carry. So there's Ishmaelites are coming from their country, and they're passing through Judea, or at this point it's Canaan. They're passing through Canaan to go to Egypt to sell or trade. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? What are we going to profit if we kill him? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. So Judah is conspiring to sell his brother to the Ishmaelites. And let not our hand be upon him. And let's remember, Ishmael was from Abraham and Hagar was an Egyptian. So the Ishmaelites are going, so look at how God is orchestrating the Ishmaelites to come be the buyers of Joseph. They're going down to Egypt because the Ishmaelites are half Egyptian, so they already have a relationship with Egypt because of Hagar. Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh, and his brothers listen to him. So he's saying, okay, so the video just started over again. I'm hoping you can hear me better now, because it just started over. Can everybody hear me better now? Now that I've reconnected, can you hear me better? Let me know if you can hear me better now. And then we'll continue reading. Is that better? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good. Good. Yeah, it just restarted itself. So maybe now. Okay, good. All right. We're going to continue reading. So his brothers decide to sell him. But notice what happens here. It says, then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. So it seems like this is a little bit confusing, because the word is saying that they saw the Ishmaelite caravan coming, and they said, let's sell him. And then it says, then Midianite traders passed by, And they, his brothers, sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. So it's interchanging the Ishmaelites with the Midianites. So you're a little bit confused here, saying, why is it saying Ishmaelites and then Midianites and then Ishmaelites again? But apparently the Ishmaelites had commingled with the Midianites and were actually living in the land of Midian. And you will see that in other places in the Bible, particularly in the book of Judges, and I believe also the book of Chronicles, where it shows that the Midianites had commingled with the Ishmaelites, so they were kind of the same peoples. The Midianites were the children of Abraham and his second wife after Sarah died. If you remember, Keturah was Abraham's second wife that he took after Sarah died, and then he had children with her at that point, and the Midianites were one of them. Well, apparently their offspring commingled with the Ishmaelites. So the Bible is showing you that the Ishmaelites and the Midianites are the same peoples. So then they take him down to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, so apparently Reuben had walked away, gone away, I don't know where he went. He's thinking that Joseph is still in the pit. He was probably tending to the flocks. He sees Joseph is not in the pit anymore, and he tears his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go? My father is going to be livid at me because I've already disappointed him once, and now his favorite son is gone." Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it's your son's robe or not." So they're tricking Jacob, who has been tricked once before by Laban, because he was a trickster, Jacob was. But here they are tricking Joseph into believing that Jacob was torn apart by ravenous wolves. Please identify whether this is your son's robe or not. And Jacob identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put on sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall not go down to Sheol to my son mourning." He refuses to be comforted. He is so distraught, he does not want to be comforted by his sons. Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites, see, it's saying Midianites again, had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar. Again, this Midianite and Ishmaelite, they're interchangeable because they had commingled their peoples together. Sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. All right, so now we're in chapter 38. So Joseph is sold to Egypt, okay? And now, after this, we see the life of Judah. So I want you to notice something very interesting here. Judah is the one who said, "Let's sell our brother to the Ishmaelites or the Midianites so we can make a profit." Okay? That was all Judah's idea. At this point, he was staying in the pit because Reuben wanted to save him. But Judah wanted to sell him. And now all of a sudden we see the life of Judah and what happens after he sells his brother to Egypt. So in chapter 38 it says, "It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. Okay, so Judah leaves his brothers. Judah is basically leaving the family, going away from his brothers, and turns aside to an Adullamite whose name was Hira. Okay? There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite. So remember, they're in the midst of the Canaanites. And Judah turns away from his family. So now he's probably going through the stages of grief. He's feeling like maybe a little bit rebellious, maybe a little bit of shame, and doesn't feel like he should be amongst his brethren for what he has done. And now he's going and basically cohabitating with Canaanites. This is completely against his father's wishes and his mother's wishes, I'm sure. I'm surprised they don't mention what happens with Leah here, but he's I don't know if he just like ran away, but he's gone away from his family, and now he sees the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. Shua was her name. And he took her and went into her. And she conceived and bore a son. So he leaves his family. Judah's a little rebellious now. Leaves his family, goes off, and he's hanging out with a Canaanite, an Adullamite, which is from the Canaanites, and sees a daughter of a certain Canaanite and marries her and has children by her, and conceives and has a son named She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she called his name Shelah. Judah was in Hesib when she bore him. So let's see where Judah was. Let me see if it's on my map. Judah was in Hesib when she bore him. Bear with me 1 second. I just want to look and see. No, I guess I don't have any maps. Oh, here it is. Trying to see where Hesib is on this map here. I don't see it. But Judah is away while she has 3 sons. Well, she had the last son. And Judah took for a wife for his oldest son. So he goes to Canaan. He has 3 sons by a Canaanite woman. And now he's taking a wife for his eldest son, And her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord. Well, that doesn't surprise us because Judah has been rebellious up to this point and has commingled with a Canaanite. So it's pretty much a given that his offspring are going to be wicked. Wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. God kills his firstborn. He has this woman, chooses this woman to be a wife for his firstborn, and then God kills his firstborn. Then Judah said to Onan, his secondborn, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother." So this you will find is this law here of marrying your brother if they're marrying the wife of your brother if he dies. You'll see that also in the Torah. So this law was already being practiced by the sons of Abraham and the families of Abraham. So if a man dies, his wife, she doesn't work. It's not like she's got a job. She has to maintain livelihood by a man, but they also want to keep the family goods, you could say, in the family. So it was a law for the brother to marry his brother's wife if his brother died. This way they would keep all of the family treasury within the family instead of her marrying outside of the family. And then also this is a way for her to keep her brother's name alive, and also keep her from having to marry outside of the family, because a woman, she couldn't stay by her, single by herself. She had to remarry. So he's saying, so Judah tells his son, his second son, go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of the brother-in-law to her and raise up offspring for your brother. So in other words, they never had children before he died. So he's telling his second son to go marry her and have children with her so that your brother's name will live on. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. It wouldn't be considered his, it would be considered his brother's. So whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste the semen on the ground so as not to give offspring to his brother. So he was disobeying his father. Okay? This was the law that he was supposed to perform, the duty of the brother-in-law. But he didn't. Every time he was with her, he would not allow himself to impregnate her, therefore disobeying Judah. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. So now God kills the secondborn. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house till Shelah, my son, grows up. So his youngest is too young to marry her and perform the duty of the brother-in-law. So he tells her to wait until he grows up and is old enough, and then he would give her his youngest son to be married as her husband. So he's saying, go back to your father, live in your father's house, and then Shelah, when he grows up, will be your husband. But he was doing this because Judah feared that his last son would die also, like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. So over the course of time, Judah's wife dies. Okay? When Judah was comforted, so look at all that Judah is going through. He loses his firstborn, he loses his secondborn, and then he loses his wife. Look at what Judah has to go through. Look at what's happening. Look at what Judah is reaping for what he did to his brother. He sold his brother into slavery. He goes and marries a Canaanite. His life is all kinds of messed up. Loses his firstborn, loses his secondborn. He's got wicked kids. His wife dies. So now all he has left is his last-born son. When Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his sheep herders. And he and his friend Hira the Adulamite, whom he was friends with from the beginning. And when Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear the sheep, she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. So she hears that he's leaving, and all this time has gone by, and he still has not given his son to her. So she takes off her widow's garments, which was the clothing that you wore as a widow, and she covers herself with a veil. And she goes along the road to Imnah, which is on the road to Timnah, so that she can catch him on his way. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, the son that was promised to her was grown up, and she had not been given to him in marriage. And so she's thinking as a woman, what am I going to do? Stay in my father's house the rest of my life and never be married again? When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. This is what prostitutes did. They covered their face with a veil so that they couldn't be identified. He turned to her on the roadside and said, come, let me come unto you. So now Judah is going along his way. His wife's dead, his sons are dead, and now he's like, oh, look, a prostitute. I'm going to sleep with her. He said, come, let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, what will you give me that you may come into me? What's your price so that we can sleep together? He answered, I will send you a goat from the flock. And she said, if you give me a pledge until you send it. She says, only if you give me a pledge until you send it. And he said, what pledge shall I give you? And she replied, your signet, your cord, and your staff that is in your hand. She gave them, excuse me. So she's asking for his signet ring, his cord, and his staff. Everything that can identify him. So he gave them to her, and he went into her. So he slept with her, and she conceived by him. Only took one time. And she arose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. So she goes back home, dresses back up as a widow, but now she's pregnant by him, and she has his signet, his cord, and his staff. When Judah sent the young goat, so he sends the young goat by his friend, the Adulamite, to take back the pledge from the woman's hand. So he's sending the goat back to her, and he wants to get back his signet, his cord, and his staff. And when he goes back there, they can't find her. And he asked the men of the place, where is the cult prostitute who was at Enaim on the roadside? And they said, no cult prostitute has been here. So he returned to Judah and said, I have not found her. Also, the men of that place said, no cult prostitute has been here. So they can't find her. And Judah replied, let her keep the things as her own, or we shall be laughed at. We're not going to continue looking for her. You see, I sent this young goat, and you did not find her. So he's like, just let her keep it. Let her keep the stuff. About 3 months later, Judah was told, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has, by the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant. And she said, please identify whose these are, the signet, the cord, and the staff. So she is very smart. So whose are these? Then Judah identified them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not know her again. When the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread in his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But he drew the hand back in, and behold, his brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So this is what was happening with Judah after they had sold Joseph in Egypt. He's got a whole messy, dysfunctional situation going on ever since he sold his brother to Egypt. So Judah is basically reaping what he sowed, and he's gotten himself into a mess of things. But now he has procreated with Tamar, who seems to be a Canaanite. So does that mean that our Messiah actually came from the union of Judah and a Canaanite woman? Because he came from the line of Perez. The line of Perez is what is going to birth the kingly line of Judah. So now we're in chapter 39, and this is going to fast forward back to Joseph. Now we're back to Joseph and what's going on in Egypt. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had brought him from the Ishmaelites who brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So God is with Joseph, and God is causing him to prosper in his slavery. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him and made him overseer of his household and put him in charge of all that he had. So Potiphar is now putting Joseph in charge of everything that he has. From the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. So now Potiphar's house is being blessed because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. So he had left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So now Joseph has risen up to power, is in charge of everything, and has no concern over anything. Now Joseph was handsome in form. Joseph is a handsome man. He loves the Lord. He hears from God. He has favor upon him. And he's a handsome man in appearance. And after a time, his master's wife with her. But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house. And he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" You see what Joseph is saying? He's saying, how can I do this to my master who has put everything in my charge, and how can I sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day. So this is happening multiple times where this woman is coming to him, throwing herself at him, saying, "Sleep with me." And he would not listen to her and lie beside her or be with her. So Joseph has the restraint to say, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to sleep with you, do this to my master and to sin against God. And notice that he points that out. He knows that he would be sinning against God because Joseph was basically with his father that whole time and learning the scriptures. He was learning God's ways because remember, they were passed down from Abraham, Isaac to Jacob, and Jacob was teaching his sons. Primarily Joseph because... Okay. All right, I'm back. I guess I'm just having connection issues all around. So his garment is left in her hands, okay? And he runs away. I mean, he is running from her. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of the household and said to them, "See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us, and came to me with..." I mean, this lady is so shysty. She wants so badly to sleep with him, and now she feels she just feels ashamed that she's been doing this. And now she's going to basically lie and say that he did something that he didn't do. "See, he brought this Hebrew among us to laugh at us, and he came to me to lie with me, and I cried out loud with a loud voice, and as soon as he heard, and I lifted my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house." So she's just flat out lying. She's probably afraid that he's going to tell her husband what she's doing. Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home, and she told him the same story. So now she's telling Potiphar when he got home what happened, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you brought amongst us came to me to laugh at me, but as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled outside of the house." As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoken to him, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger was kindled. So now Potiphar's bad. He's upset. Of course he would be upset. "And Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison." So he throws him in prison. And a lot of people will say that part of Potiphar did not believe his wife, because if he had really truly believed that Joseph did this, he would have had him put to death. So he puts him in prison because he doesn't really know for a fact that Joseph didn't do it, but he doesn't really believe his wife 100%. So he just throws him in jail, basically, instead of killing him. So we do believe that there is a part of Potiphar that didn't really believe his wife and didn't really believe Joseph did that. But the Lord was with Joseph while he was in prison and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So everywhere Joseph goes, he has favor. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. Joseph is constantly being given responsibility, probably because he's a man of God. And they can sense this presence upon him. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. You see, because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. Last chapter, guys, chapter 40. These are more dreams. But now Joseph is not the one having the dreams. Now Joseph is the one interpreting the dreams. So not only is Joseph a dream haver, he's also a dream interpreter. So chapter 40 says, "Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard and in the prison where Joseph was confined. So something happens with the chief cupbearer and the baker to where Pharaoh has to throw them both in prison, where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And the one night they both dreamed. So both of these men dream. And the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each had his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. They seemed like they were shaken by these dreams they had. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces so downcast today?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" See, Joseph has the wherewithal to know that God is the one that interprets dreams. Dreams were very big during this time and, in this culture. Dream omens were a dominant medium of the Egyptians for foreseeing the future. So they knew that dreams would and could tell you the future. But the ancient Egyptians also believed it necessary to have diviners skilled in the arts of dream interpretations. So the Egyptians were very much into, supernatural things of the spirit, and they were very much aware that you needed interpreters. So Joseph says, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph, and he said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and in the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms set forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes." So the vine is producing fruit. "Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup into Pharaoh's hand." So this vine is producing fruit. He takes the grapes, makes wine, gives it to Pharaoh. Then Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer." So he's saying that God is going to restore you back to the position that you were in. Excuse me. Only, Joseph is asking him, "Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh. And so get me out of this house. Remember me when you go back to Pharaoh and say, Joseph is in there. Try to get me out." "Please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh so as to get me out of this house. For I was indeed," so listen to Joseph here. Excuse me. "For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me in this pit." Basically, plead my innocence because I'm innocent here. When the chief baker saw the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head." 3 cake baskets on my head. Remember, he was the baker. "And in the uttermost basket were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating out of it, out of the basket on my head. The birds were eating out of it. And Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days, and in 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you." Doesn't sound good. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, notice here, this is probably, I think, the only part of Scripture where it mentions someone celebrating a birthday. This was a very pagan custom. This was not a Hebrew custom. Hebrews did not keep birthdays. Egyptians kept birthdays because it was a very much an idolatrous culture. So they were in idolatry, and idolatry tends to have you not only worshiping idols, but worshiping yourself. So it's not surprising that they would have been worshiping the day that they were born. I'm sorry, not worshiping, but celebrating the day that they were born, because this had to do with worshiping yourself. But this is, I think, one of the only times in the Bible that you'll see someone celebrating a birthday. So on the 3rd day, it was Pharaoh's birthday. And he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer. So somewhere along the line, there's probably an investigation going on with whatever happened with the cupbearer and the baker. And Pharaoh finds the cupbearer innocent and finds the baker guilty. There was some sort of investigation going on, and the cupbearer is found innocent because he's restored back to his position, and the baker is found guilty and is killed. Lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, just like what happened in the dream. But he hanged the chief baker and Joseph as Joseph had interpreted them. Yet the chief cupbearer didn't remember Joseph, but he forgot. So he forgot. He forgot about Joseph. So Joseph is going to continue to be in prison for a time until chapter 41. So you see, we're going to get back. We're going to finish up with Joseph next Shabbat in chapter 41, and we're going to see what happens with Joseph with the rest of his days in prison and what happens after that. But I want you to keep this in mind. It's definitely something to ponder. Why would God choose Judah to be the kingly line of out of all the 12 tribes of Israel? Why is Judah chosen as the kingly line? I want you to keep this question in your mind throughout the week, because Judah sells his brother Joseph to Egypt. That was his doing. Leaves his family and goes and marries a Canaanite woman, has children. 2 of them die, loses his wife, his Canaanite wife, and sleeps with a prostitute, which is his daughter-in-law, has children by her, not knowing that it was his daughter-in-law. And it is through Perez, the oldest, the one that came out first from the womb, it is through Perez that we have the kingly line. So is this a mixture of Judah and Canaanite blood that we have? Why is it that God would choose Judah's line to bring the kings of Israel and ultimately the Messiah? Because Messiah comes through the line of Judah. And why did the Messiah have to come through the line of Judah? Why is that? Why is that, do you think, that Judah had to be the one the kings came from and the one the Messiah came from? Keep those things in mind. I might be doing more videos on that throughout the week. Just my thoughts on that. But those are some good questions to ask yourself. I also want to reiterate, write down your dreams that you think are from God, not the ones that are hodgepodge of stuff mixed together from your subconscious. But when you get a dream that you really feel like, this is kind of symbolic, I feel like it's not something that I would have consciously dreamt myself, it's not anything having to do with what was going on throughout my day, it wasn't anything that I was thinking about, I just had this dream and I feel like it's conveying a message, write them down. Make sure you write them down. You should have a dream journal, but like I said, they don't come often. I dream every single night, and I very, very, very rarely is it a dream from God, like with a message. Like I said, I could count on both hands. It's very rare because God is not always speaking. He's not speaking that often. I mean, you'll see Joseph had 2 dreams about what was going to happen, and then he interprets dreams, and then we don't hear about him having any more dreams or messages from God. But write them down, because God does have a message. God does have a message for you. He does have a word to speak over your life personally, and that is one of the ways that God speaks, is through dreams. God will speak through people. God will speak to you, to your spirit sometimes. Sometimes God will speak through a dream. Sometimes God will speak through... God can speak through anything. He can speak through a movie, a song, something that's been on your heart, and God is like giving you these signs, and He's telling you something. That's why you should always keep a position of expectancy to hear from God. And just keep your eyes and your ears open, because God is going to speak through different means. He's not always going to speak through the same channel. And when He does, it's usually very clear, and you know that that was from God. Write them down. Write them down so that you can keep track of them, so that you can go back and reference them, because sometimes we will forget. We get in this life and we forget what His Holy Spirit says to us. And it's usually going to help us in our walk. And we need to remember what God is telling us He's going to do, or what we have to keep His messages in mind, because God's plan for our life is a progressive revelation. It's not something that we're going to see all at once. God is not going to tell us everything He's going to do in our lives in one time. He's going to give us little pieces of a big puzzle, and you'll have this piece, and you'll have this piece, and you'll have a piece over here, but you can't see the whole picture. And God does that for a reason, because He can't give it all to us at once. And I'm just talking on a personal level with your walk with God. You want to have these little pieces of the puzzle written down, so you can start to sort of put this picture together of what God's doing in your life. So I encourage you to document those things so that you can, sort of see. And if you haven't ever had a dream, if you haven't ever heard from God at all, then you really need to listen. The more you're in the Word, the more you're going to hear from God. The more you're hearing from God, the more you're going to understand what the plan for His life is for you, and things that He wants to say to you. This is something that you have to keep your spiritual eyes and ears open and expectant, like constantly looking out for God speaking to you. Because like I said, it doesn't happen all the time. It's not something that, the Spirit can be guiding you every day, but God isn't giving you specific messages or revelations or prophetic words all the time, but you still have to be in a position to receive it, and then have the wherewithal to keep it in your spirit, to keep it in your mind. Write it down. I promise you, the more you get in the Word, the more you're going to hear from God, and more revelation you're going to have. And then the more you're going to be able to walk a straight path, instead of just not knowing where you're going. You're going to feel like you're lost. Where am I going? Joseph knew exactly what his destiny was. That's why he had peace when he was in Egypt, because God was with him. So that no matter where God took him, he had shalom. He had peace, because he knew God is with me. If God is with me, who can be against me? Right? Isn't that what the Bible says? If God is with me, who can be against me? Why do I need to fear? Because I know that it's God's plan. When you feel God with you, no matter where you go, you have a peace about it. Remember Paul? No matter what he went through, he knew it was God's plan for him. So he did not fear anything. He said, what can man do to me? Because I'm in God's plan for my life. And you have to get to that point. Otherwise, you're going to feel like, oh my God, this is happening and I don't understand it. But if you're connected, you're going to see, I know God's doing something. I might not know exactly where this is going to lead or what's going to come out on the other side, but I know that God is working and he's doing this for a purpose. Okay? This is how we keep peace in the midst of storms or uncertainty, when we can't really see what is God doing here, but he's doing something. He's doing something with a purpose. And we have to find out what that purpose is. God bless you. I'll go ahead and say Shabbat Shalom, even though it's Sunday. I hope to see you next Shabbat. We're going to continue with our Bible readings, our whole word study, and I hope to see you there as well. God's willing, I won't have any more. Please pray that I won't have any more technical difficulties, and that somehow God will lead me to finding out what I need to do next. Because I feel like God is taking me to in a different direction somehow, even if that just means doing more videos instead of posting things, because the posts are going nowhere, and I don't understand it. But if you'll be so willing to say a little prayer for me, I hope you'll help lift me up in prayer, so that I know what God is trying to do and how he's trying to direct me, because I feel a shift. You know how sometimes you just feel a shift, and maybe it's just because we're going to be going over to Lighthouse. Lighthouse should be coming out very soon. It's a new platform. It's a wonderful platform. There won't be any censoring, so hopefully we'll all be jumping ship and going to Lighthouse. But I hope to see you next Shabbat, and I hope that you will take those things into consideration regarding your dreams and a word from the Lord, and let's stay in the Word so we can keep hearing from God, okay? Amen. God bless you, and Shabbat Shalom.